Lucius Manlius Imperiosus was appointed dictator to perform a ritual to end a plague that killed many in Rome. However, how he treated his mentally impaired son Titus overshadowed his career, enraged many, and led to his resignation. As a tribune of the people prepared to prosecute him for cruelty, the son did the unexpected and made many to see past his dullness and elect him into office. I welcome you to my YouTube channel where I explore ancient texts. The ancient texts I explore in this channel are those that have been around for thousands of years. At the moment, I'm going through From the Founding of the City by Titus Livius or Livy. This is a collection of books that covers the history of Rome from its founding by Romulus in the 750s BCE to the time when Augustus was emperor, which was close to 0 AD. If you have not subscribed, subscribe so that you do not miss any of the videos I publish. Around 364 BCE, a plague ravaged Rome and killed many. Among its victims was the celebrated general Marcus Furius Camillus. Livy tells us that the people became desperate for a solution that could bring the plague to an end. Livy writes, "It is said to have been discovered that the older men remembered a plague had once been mitigated by the dictator driving in a nail. The Senate believed this to be a religious obligation and ordered a dictator to be nominated for that purpose. Lucius Manlius Imperiosus was nominated, and he appointed Lucius Spinarius as his master of the horse. The ritual the dictator was supposed to perform was to drive a nail into the temple of Jupiter. Livy tells us that this ritual had been copied from the Etruscans, who usually performed it in the temple of goddess Nostria. This ritual was performed, and then, according to Livy, the true reasons for the appointment of the dictator surfaced. Livy writes, Lucius Manlius was accordingly nominated, but regarding his appointment as due to political rather than to religious reasons and eager to command in the war with the Hanisi, he caused a very angry feeling among the men liable to serve by the inconsiderate way in which he conducted the enrollment. The actual reason for appointing a dictator was to lead war efforts against the Hanisi. Livy tells us that during the recruitment of soldiers, the dictator fined heavily, beat up, and imprisoned people often for minor transgressions such as not answering promptly when their names were called. Livy writes, "What men most loathed was his brutal temperament and the epithet Imperiosus, or masterful, which had been given to him because of his unblushing cruelty, an epithet utterly repugnant to a free state. But he seemed to have reserved the worst treatment for his own son, Titus Manlius. Titus, Livy tells us, had some form of mental impairment, which in particular made his speech difficult. Instead of providing support as many expected, Lucius Manlius chose to punish him for it. He sent him away from the city to work as basically an enslaved person in a workshop in another town, where he had to sleep among cattle. Livy writes, "It was alleged that, although guilty of no offense, he had banished him from the city, from his home and household gods, had forbidden him to appear in public in the forum or to associate with those of his own age, and had consigned him to servile work, almost to the imprisonment of a workshop. Here the youth of high birth, the son of a dictator, was to learn by daily suffering how rightly his father was called Imperiosus, and for what offense? Because he was lacking in eloquence, in readiness of speech. Because of how badly he treated citizens, and even more how cruel he was to his son, who lived with a disability, the people under the leadership of the tribunes protested." Livy quotes them stating the following regarding his treatment of the son. "Ought not this natural defect to have been helped and remedied by the father if there was a spark of humanity in him, instead of being punished and branded by persecution? Not even do brute beasts show less care and protection to their offsprings if they happen to be sickly or deformed." At some point, the opposition was too great, and Lucius Manlius Imperiosus resigned from the office of dictator. But that was not the end of the issue. More drama followed his resignation, ending with his son becoming a hero by saving him. Almost immediately after resigning, one Marcus Pomponius, a tribune of the plebeians, decided to prosecute him at the public assembly. By all indications, the people seemed ready to impeach him and met the most severe punishment possible. Everyone assumed the son, especially considering the mistreatment he had received, shared their hatred for the father, and like everyone else, would be happy to see him punished. That turned out not to be the case. Titus instead saved his father from the enraged public through a means no one expected, especially from him. Livy writes, "The youth himself was the last to be exasperated by these accusations brought against his father. On the contrary, he was so indignant at finding himself made the ground of the charges against his father, and the deep resentment they created, that he was determined to let gods and men see that he preferred standing by his father to helping his enemies. He devised a secret plan to stop the prosecution of his father. One early morning, he headed to the house of Marcus Pomponius, the man preparing to lead the prosecution of his father. He introduced himself to the guards at the gate and informed them he needed to see Marcus Pomponius. Pomponius excitedly welcomed him into his house, expecting fresh material for his prosecution of Manlius. The young man requested that he talk to him in private, and so those present needed to be asked to leave the room, which was promptly done. Livy writes, "After all present had been ordered to withdraw, he grasped his knife, which he had concealed until that moment, and standing over the tribune's bed and pointing the weapon towards him, threatened to plunge it into him at once unless he took the oath which he was going to dictate to him, that he will never hold an assembly of the plebeians for the prosecution of his father." Livy tells us that Pomponius was terrified as he was alone, defenseless, facing a strong and ferocious young man with a glittering steel in his hand. He did as the young man demanded. He swore to abandon the prosecution of his father and later announced it to the public. Livy writes, "The plebeians would certainly have been glad of the opportunity of passing sentence on such an insolent and cruel offender, but they were not displeased at the son's daring deed in defense of his parent, which was all the more meritorious because it showed that his father's brutality had not in any way weakened his natural affection and sense of duty. Indeed, this action changed Titus Manlius' fortunes in the city. While he had initially been considered dull and incapable of anything by many, including his own father, he became so popular that he was elected that same year as a military tribune." Livy writes, "This youth obtained the second out of 6 places, though he had done nothing at home or in the field to make him popular, having passed his youth in the country far from the city life." Titus Manlius went on to have an illustrious military and political career. After leading the Romans in beating the Gauls in a battle, he was given the title Torquatus, which his family carried for generations. If you found this video interesting, take a moment to strike the like button. I also welcome your comment. See you in the next video.